Today, we're diving deep into the Subdivision Surface Modifier, the secret weapon for crafting smooth as butter models. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have a true understanding of the Subdiv modifier, setting you ahead of most beginners. Welcome to Modifiers in Depth. Before we break down this modifier, I'm going to give you a quick summary. We use the Subdivision Surface Modifier to make our objects smoother, improving the appearance of our model. To add a Subdiv modifier, first select your model with left click and then come to the wrench or spanner icon in the properties panel on the bottom right of the Blender workspace. If you can't see it, you can just pull this up here. Press add modifier and then search for Subdivision Surface. I'll keep it at Catmull-clark and increase these values to increase the smoothness. Careful to adjust slowly so you don't add too much, as this will significantly increase render times or crash Blender. Also remember to right click and shade smooth when you're done. You'll notice how it smoothed my object out a little bit too much around the sleeves. I will go into greater detail on how this is done later, but for now, I'll quickly show you how I fix it. I'll just go into edit mode by pressing tab, and then I can press Ctrl R, which will allow me to add a loop cut. I can then left click and pull this loop cut towards, and because there's barely any distance between these two edges here, the smoothness is not as strong. I would probably also add one here. Press this X symbol to remove your modifier. You can also add the subdiv mod by pressing Ctrl and then the number of subdivisions you'd like to add. So if I left click my model and then press Ctrl 2, I've now added a subdiv, and you can see the number right here is 2. After that rundown, you might have grasped how to add the subdiv, but you may have a few questions, such as, what is the subdiv doing? What does Simple and Catmull-clark do? And why does the subdiv mod increase render times? And some of you who have experimented with Blender might wonder why subdiv does this to the default cube. Let's get started answering these questions. The most fundamental thing to understand is that subdiv mod adds more geometry to our object. This is the same for Simple and Catmull-clark. However, Simple doesn't smooth things out like Catmull-clark. By the way, that Catmull-clark smoothing is also what turns our cube to a sphere. The simple option is the same as performing the subdivide operation in edit mode. Some of you might be wondering what I'm talking about, so I'll demonstrate. I've got an empty scene here, and I'm just going to press Shift A, and then I'm going to add a cube. Then I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, because I'm going to compare this to the subdivision modifier. I'll press G and Y to pull my duplicate along. I'm going to left click my second cube, and I'm going to press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision modifier, and I'll change it to simple. Now I'll left click my first object, and I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode. And now you can see we have our 6 faces of our cube. Then I'll right click and left click subdivide. I can also come to this menu in the left hand corner, and this will allow me to change how many cuts I have. Number of cuts won't necessarily correspond the same as the number we choose in the subdiv mod, but to get it to match 2, which we'll set our other cube to, I'm going to change this value to 3. But you can also achieve this by just keeping it at 1 and then left clicking away, pressing A again, and subdividing again. I'll then left click my other cube, change my levels viewport and my render to 2, increasing the subdivisions to 2. This would be like performing that subdiv operation twice, clicking away each time. But if I go into edit mode, you can see we can't see our cuts, and that's because our subdivision is only visible and not editable. So to make it editable, if I try and apply the subdivision mode, you can see I'm unable to do this, and that's because I'm in edit mode. So I'll make sure to go back to object mode by pressing tab, left click this drop down again, and then press apply. Now I'm going to left click my cube and shift select the other one, press tab, and now you can see both of them have been subdivided. You might also be wondering how I can subdivide this in a similar manner to the Catmull-clark. To do that, I'll undo until I've got my modifier back, and I'm going to change it to Catmull-clark. And if I want to do the same for my cube, I'm then going to left click this cube, press Shift D, and press G and Y to move it along. I'll then remove my modifier by pressing the X like we discussed earlier. Then if I press tab to go into edit mode, I can right click and choose subdivide again. I'm going to set its cuts to 3, which would be like subdividing it twice in this modifier. In order to get it to work a bit like Catmull-clark, we'll need to change the smoothness up. I'll set up to 1. And now you can see we can subdivide our cube Catmull-clark style as well. Of course, we will need to scale this down to match. I'll right click to cancel that operation. So you can see simple in the subdivision modifier and subdivision in edit mode do the same thing. And you can even achieve a similar result to the Catmull-clark in edit mode as well by using the smooth slider. One thing I should mention though is that you need to be careful when applying modifiers, because once you apply it, you can't edit it with this modifier menu, and if you go enough steps ahead, you won't be able to undo back far enough to undo it. Editing an object with a modifier, making the change non-permanent, is called non-destructive editing. But as you might imagine, applying the modifier would turn the non-destructive subdiv mod into a destructive effect. You might be wondering why you would want to apply it in the first place. There's a variety of reasons, but here's some of the main ones. First of all, you get more control over your model in edit mode, and also for use with certain Blender features, such as triangulating your model without the triangulate modifier. When modeling with subdiv, it can sometimes be handy to turn on the cage, I recommend turning this on and off as you go to see how things are looking. Number 2. Making hard edges for Catmull-clark. If I apply a subdiv modifier to this cube by pressing Ctrl 2, you'll notice it turns into a sphere. But maybe I only want to make part of my sphere rounded. To do this, we'll need to add a thing called a supporting loop, which we added earlier to our character model. These can also be known as holding edges. To add one, I'll press tab to go into edit mode and press Ctrl R and add a loop cut. Now you'll notice when I pull this closer, it hardens the edges here. The reason it does this is because Catmull-clark calculates the smoothness between each face, and because these two edge loops here are very close together, the smoothing is less. Now I want you to think about what would happen if we put a loop cut right up to the edge of every single edge. If you guessed that it would turn into a normal cube, you'd be correct. To do that quickly, I can just press Ctrl X with this loop selected, just to dissolve those vertices. And now I'm going to press A to select everything, and then choose Ctrl B to bevel. And that just acts as a quick way for me to add some more loops. I'll set this number here to 2, and now we've got this nice smooth cube. Are there any alternatives to using supporting loops? Yeah, we can use something called mean crease. So to do that, I press 2 on the keyboard, and I'll left click this edge, and I'm just going to Control left click all these edges. In the item panel, under transform, I can change my mean crease here, and you'll notice when I pull this closer to 1, it's going to get a harder edge. There can be some shading artifacts while using this, and for that reason I usually use supporting loops. Just be careful for the vertex merge when using supporting loops. It's known as this auto merge tool under the options in the item menu in the side panel. This side panel, as I explained earlier, is opened by pressing N, so I personally always keep this auto merge off. Also remember that mirror modifiers sometimes use auto merge too, so be careful for that. Let's quickly recap what we've learned with a quiz. What fundamental thing does subdiv do? What's the difference between Catmull-clark and simple? Finally, how can we create hard edges with Catmull-clark? Pause the video, and when you're ready to hear the answers, you can press play again. Number 1. What fundamental thing does subdiv do? The subdivision surface modifier performs the subdivision operation on an object, increasing the amount of vertices on our object. Number 2. What's the difference between Catmull-clark and simple? Catmull-clark will smooth out our object like this, whereas simple won't add any smoothing, but it will still add vertices. Keep in mind that even if you don't apply your modifier, there's still more vertices there, meaning longer render times. Number 3. How can we create hard edges with Catmull-clark mode? To do this, we can use supporting loops by pressing Ctrl R and moving our loops closer to other loops. Because there's not a lot of space between two edge loops, this creates a hard edge effect with Catmull-clark. You can also achieve this with using the mean crease. Just remember that it can cause shading artifacts sometimes, and for that reason, I usually like to use support loops instead. If you're unsure if you've answered correctly or not, write your answers in the comments and I'll answer your questions. Also, if you enjoy my teaching style, I also provide one-on-one coaching, completed with personalized lessons and post-lesson quiz questions and support. Link in the description if you're interested. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. You can also support the channel by making a one-time donation through Super, but even just liking, subscribing and sharing if you enjoyed is more than enough to support the channel. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.